Now, brothers and sisters, to give an introduction for our keynote speaker, let's all welcome Brother Solfi Confiado.
Our guest this afternoon is already a household name in the Philippines and recently in the world stage as well. We only need to Google his full name or even his nickname, and we will be presented with several hits from his personal background to his sterling scholastic achievements, to his pastoral experience, to his various ministerial assignments, and most recently, to his elevation to the College of Cardinals, one of only 8 Filipinos in our church's history. But let me set aside all of these things and share with you a glimpse of him who will speak before us in a while. Our paths crossed 35 years ago in 1979 at the San Jose Major Seminary Annex in Leola Heights, Quezon City. He was in his 3rd year of philosophy while I was a freshman. Even then, it was a consensus, especially among us freshmen and sophomores, that he was extraordinary, a cut above everybody else. No doubt, he was exceptionally brilliant, graduating summa cum laude with a bachelor's degree in pre-divinity. Rumor has it that his intelligence was at par with some of the most illustrious alumni of the Ateneo de Manila, Dr. Jose Rizal and Father Horacio de la Costa, among others. But he also excelled in other pursuits. Music was one of them, conducting the San Jose Major Seminary Choir, collaborating with the late Father Eduardo Hontiveros, SJ of the Society of Jesus, who is considered the father of Filipino liturgical music. That was why we used to say and to joke around that when the Lord scattered the gift of intelligence, our guests caught most, if not all of them. But what is truly exceptional about him is that he carried his persona with so much humility, simplicity, and grace all of these years. After we met 3 months ago in March, when he renewed his passport in my office, and he gave us a very personal referral letter to Cardinal Tong of Hong Kong and Bishop Lai of Macau during our visit to these 2 cities as regional CFC coordinator. I noticed and I told Presi that in spite of all of these years, Chito was the same person whom Presi and I met several decades ago. Kind and gentle to people with his sense of humor and laughter. His humility and simple ways has endeared him to us all. His desire to make our church more responsive to the poor is, I believe, rooted in his deep spirituality, in his being a man of prayer, a man after God's own heart. It is providential indeed that our gospel reading today from St. Matthew chapter 6, 1 to 18 aptly describes who he is. And following the very beautiful prayer of St. Ignatius of Loyola, let me end by saying that our beloved Cardinal is one who gives but does not count the cost. He who fights and does not heed the wounds. He toils and does not seek for rest. He labors and does not ask for any reward. Your Excellencies, my dear brothers and sisters, it is my and precious privilege to introduce to you our dear friend, His Eminence, Cardinal Chito Tagle.
Thank you very much. You may remain standing during my talk. You may now sit down, please. I would like to thank the organizers of this conference for not only the beautiful theme, but for inviting me to be part of this gathering. And Solfi, thank you very much. Your kind words sounded like a decree of canonization. It's good that the Pope hears you and knows me. Hi. This afternoon, I was tasked to reflect with you on the Church of the Poor as a constitutive dimension of the proclamation of the gospel. And I would like to acknowledge my brother archbishops and bishops who are here from different parts of the world. I know that what I will share is very little compared to what you know and what you have been living in the area of Church of the Poor. As a keynote address, this presentation will hopefully clarify for us what the Church of the Poor is in the teachings of the Church and the history of the Church these past 50 years. We are so used to hearing Church of the Poor, Church of the Poor. And while it is good to be reminded of it often, one danger is when something is used frequently, we seldom ask, what does that mean? We just presume everyone understands that. But actually, it has become a slogan. And we do not want the Church of the Poor, the expression Church of the Poor, to remain simply that, a slogan. And so I take this opportunity to share with you a bit of my research on the Church of the Poor. It is quite providential that last Monday last week, I was invited to address a gathering of the Caritas International held in Bangkok for their Asian Regional Assembly to talk about the Church of the Poor, exactly the same theme. No? And so we are in line with the whole thrust of Caritas International and the Asian region of Caritas. So what I intend to do this afternoon is to play the role of a teacher again. I see some of you with paper and pen. Better take down notes. I will give an exam, a quiz after this reflection. Those with more than 2 mistakes will not be given snacks. We will practice being church of the poor. Okay. Next year, 2015, we will celebrate the 50th anniversary of the closing of Vatican II. 50 years of Vatican II. So I would like to start my reflection from that moment when Vatican II was just being planned and when it was announced. So we will take a journey from the time of Saint John the 23rd up to our present time and see how did the church understand the expression Church of the Poor. And you will see at every stage of its development, the Church of the Poor is truly a part, a constitutive part of evangelization, of the proclamation of the gospel. First stop, Pope John the 23rd. On September 11, 1962, September 11, 9/11, but 1962, in a radio message before the opening of the Second Vatican Council, Pope John the 23rd said, confronted with the underdeveloped countries, the church presents itself as the church of all, and particularly as the church of the poor. Remember, 1962, Pope John the 23rd already used the expression Church of the Poor. Who among us here were already born in 1962? Kayo? Huh? Please tell the truth. Okay. So, the majority. So 1962, already John the 23rd, in announcing the council that will be opened a month later, October 11, said that the church wants to be the church of all, and particularly the church of the poor. This is a very important idea from Pope John the 23rd. Church of all and church of the poor. Some people might say, if it is church of the poor, then the non-poor are forgotten or are not part of it. But no, in the thinking of John the 23rd, if the church wants to be the church of everyone, that church cannot be the church of all without becoming church of the poor. Why? Because the majority of the people that make up the church are the poor. Forget the poor, and the church is not the church for all. We become universal church by not forgetting this important segment, in fact, the biggest segment of all, the poor. So, in the mind of John the 23rd, the church of the poor is a guarantee that the church will remain universal. Without being church of the poor, we are one small group. But with the poor there, we are the church of all. So please, in the mind of John the 23rd, there should not be any opposition. Church of the poor as being selective. No. We serve the poor so that we can be for everyone. Just to give you an example. You know, we bishops are invited occasionally by the rich. Let's face it. And I guess not only the bishops, all of you, all of us here, when we are invited to the house of a rich family, to a dinner, a lunch offered by the rich, I'm sure we enjoy the amenities. You enjoy the ambiance. You enjoy the fine taste of the food. You enjoy, the fine flowers at the middle of the table. You enjoy the linen used much better than your clothing. You taste things that, wow, no? That might make you forget your name, your birthday, no? Because they transport you out of this world. But here is the catch. When you are invited by the rich, you might say yes, not because you love the person, but because you enjoy the fringe benefits. It is not so much the person, but it is the food that they serve, the fine drinks, the fancy airs and conversation. How are you naman? All of those things, and you enjoy the air conditioning and the gifts, the souvenirs afterwards. That's what you enjoy. When you go to the poor, when you are invited by the poor, you don't have those things. In fact, very often, what you have is practically nothing. What you get are dusty roads, muddy alleys, bread with so many flies, water that looks murky, things that are not at all pleasant. But when we go to the poor, we are not after the fringe benefits. When we go to the poor, it is the person of the poor that really matters, because they have nothing to give but their person. And when we embrace the persons of the poor, we are taught to respect human beings and to find the worth of human beings in their being human, not in what they own, possess, and give. So among the poor, we learn to respect persons. Among the poor, we become a church for all, not a church for fringe benefits. Loving the poor, we know, we learn how to love everyone because you are a human person and not because you have something fancy to offer to me. To be church of all, we have to be church of the poor. This is from John the 23rd. Now, we go to the council, the Second Vatican Council. This is the second stop in our journey. During the Second Vatican Council, when all the bishops of the world were gathered in the Vatican, there was a group that called themselves the Church of the Poor. So for those people who think that they are proposing something new, something contemporary by using the Church of the Poor, well, it is not that new. 1962, it was already used. And during Vatican II, there was an informal group of bishops, even cardinals, who met regularly, and they called themselves Church of the Poor. You might recognize some of the names who were part of this group. We have Patriarch Maximus IV of the Melkite Church in Palestine. We have Monsignor Helder Pessoa Câmara of Brazil, Archbishop Helder Câmara. We have Monsignor Georges Mercier. We have Monsignor Georges Hakim. We have Monsignor Charles-Marie Humer. We have Cardinal Pierre Gerlier of Lyon, France. We have Cardinal Giacomo Lercaro of Bologna. And we have Cardinal Giovanni Battista Montini of Milan, who became Pope Paul VI. After the death of John the 23rd, he continued Vatican II. This group, called the Church of the Poor, they proposed ideas during the discussions at Vatican II. And please take note, these were the ideas that they had regarding the Church of the Poor. They said, there is a perception that a gap exists between the church and the poor. Why? Because the church is perceived to be in alliance with the capitalists rather than with simple laborers and workers. Already in 1962, they were saying the church is perceived as a close friend of capitalism, and the church is not associated so much with the simple people, especially laborers and workers. So they say we should reduce the gap. It is not good for the church to be separate, at least perceived to be separate from the laborers. Another thing that they called for, my brother bishops and priests, this group called the Church of the Poor, they called for a review of the lifestyle and the honors given to the clergy. They say this is part of the Church of the Poor. The dignity and the honors. You know, may I digress for a while. Last February, I went to Rome to attend the meeting. My flight was Manila, Hong Kong, Rome. You can guess the airline that I took. Yes, Hong Kong. So I arrived in Hong Kong and I was looking for the gate of my next flight. And somebody recognized me, a Caucasian, no? And he stopped me. And when he opened his mouth, no, I heard an American twang. So he said, Cardinal Tagle? Tagle. Cardinal Tagle? I said, yes. He said, oh, Cardinal. I said, I've been following you on YouTube. I said, oh, thank you. He said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Rome, and I'm looking for the gate of my next flight. And he said, you're traveling alone? I said, yes. And I was with my backpack. And said, but why are you traveling alone? I said, well, I think I am young and healthy enough to travel alone. Aha, and then came the magic statement. But you are a cardinal. Where is your entourage? I said, but should a cardinal always have an entourage? You know, when he let me loose, when he let me free, I really felt a bit sad that there is this expectation. Instead of praising me and thanking me for traveling alone and being simple, parang I was made to feel that I was doing something bad. Parang you are behaving way below your dignity. You are a cardinal. Maybe if I travel with 20, 30 persons, they will say, oh, really? A cardinal? Yeah, but this is not new. Already in 1962, the group called the Church of the Poor already said, in the council, the bishop should discuss this. Let us review the lifestyle, the dignity, the honor given to ecclesiastics. You know, I had a student from a country that used to be British territory. And you know how they address bishops, no? My Lord. My Lord. Well, of course, it is the English version of Monsignor, Monsignore, my Lord. Okay. So, he would call me my Lord. I say, hey, don't call me Lord. Call me Bishop. That is the term in the Bible, episkopos, bishop. Don't call me Lord. there is only one Lord. I said, oh, I'm sorry. I see him again and he will say, my Lord, hey, I told you not to call me Lord. You are in the Philippines, call me Bishop. But he kept forgetting. And one time he called, my Lord. I said, hey, why don't you call me Jesus Christ? That was the end of it. From that time on, he said, no, I cannot call you Jesus Christ. Okay, then don't call me Lord. But all of these titles, Lord, 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 I mean, do I look like a lord? Landlord or what? Lord. So, something like this was already brewing in Vatican II with a group called the Church of the Poor. Then, another suggestion of this group, they said, poverty. Poverty should be considered an essential aspect of the mystery of Christ and of the church. How do we understand Christ? How do we understand the church? They said poverty is essential to understanding Christ and the church. That is precisely your theme. You use the word constitutive. Now, this group, the Church of the Poor, used the term essential. Poverty is an essential path to take for us to understand Jesus Christ himself and the church. There were many other suggestions from the Church of the Poor group in Vatican II. Historians say that this group influenced Pope Paul VI in many ways. When Pope Paul VI became Pope, you know, there used to be the coronation ceremony of the Pope. That's why the popes had the tiara. The popes at the beginning of their ministry as popes were crowned. So there was the papal tiara. But Paul VI, after being crowned, he renounced the tiara. And he gave it and said, this should be used for the poor, to help the poor. So from Paul VI up to Pope Francis, no more coronation. No more coronation of popes. You just have the simple inauguration of papal ministry. Pope Paul VI simplified the liturgy, simplified the vestments, and simplified the procedures in the Vatican. And he set up the council Cor Unum, the charity arm of the Vatican towards the poor. So we see in Vatican II already this desire to have a church of the poor with very concrete steps being taken. Okay. Are you still awake? Remember, there is a quiz. So, John the 23rd, and secondly, the group called the Church of the Poor. The third stop, we go to some teachings of Vatican II. I will dwell only on two teachings. First is Lumen Gentium, the document of Vatican II on the church. The church. In paragraph 18, 1.8 of Lumen Gentium, we are led to a foundation of the Church of the Poor. Lumen Gentium says, Christ is present in the poor. The church serves Christ in them. A beautiful reminder what the Church of the Poor is. Being Church of the Poor is not just about activities to benefit the poor. For Vatican II, being Church of the Poor begins with a spiritual vision. Christ is present in the poor. And whoever serves the poor must consciously serve Christ in the poor. Seeing Christ, serving Christ in the poor. This is the Christological foundation of Church of the Poor. Seeing Christ, serving Christ in the poor. This got verified for me when Mother Teresa of Calcutta, now Blessed Teresa, visited the Philippines. I was still a seminarian. I don't know whether Solfi was already in the seminary at that time. Maybe not. Not yet in college. 1974, I remember. Mother Teresa came and addressed the seminarians of the Metro Manila area. We had so many questions. One seminarian asked her, "Mother, what do you do to help you stand the odor of the poor? You pick up these poor dying people from the gutters. They are dirty, no, they smell. What do you do to strengthen yourself?" In Filipino, anong ginagawa nyo para makayanan ang amoy, ang dumi ng mga dukha? And Mother Teresa, I will never forget this. Mother Teresa said, "I see Jesus in them. When I carry a poor man, I am carrying Jesus." So all the odor, the stench, the dirt don't matter at all. I see Jesus. I embrace Jesus. That's Church of the Poor. And that is in Lumen Gentium. Christ present in the poor. And in Gaudium et Spes, the document of Vatican II on the church in the modern world, the immortal words are there. The joys and hopes, the sorrows and anxieties, especially of the poor and the afflicted. These are the same hopes and joys, sorrows and anxieties of the disciples of Christ. So, another principle is given to the Church of the Poor. Lumen Gentium gives the Christological. The Church of the Poor sees and serves Christ in the poor. But in Gaudium et Spes, the Church of the Poor is in solidarity, communion with the poor, in their hopes and joys, in their sorrows and anxieties. They are our own. Usually when I officiate in weddings, I tell the couple, from now on, you will live in communion with one another. Now, his joy will be your joy. Yeah. And then I say, his dreams will be your dream. And then I say, his sorrow, sumasagot na yung girl, my sorrow. Ayan. Ayan. His pains, my pains. And I say, his utang, the woman, kanya yun. His debts are his, not mine. The end of communion. Even among family members, communion might disappear. And that is sad when a family is divided, where the hope of one group is not the same hope of the other group. When the pain of one group is not anymore the pain of the other group. But the Church of the Poor, according to Vatican II, is the church where the hopes, the joys, the sorrows, the anxieties of the poor are our own. You cry with the poor. You laugh with them. You dream with them. And you work with them. Solidarity, but rooted in a vision. I see Christ in them. I serve Christ in them. So, Church of the Poor in the vision of Vatican II is not just parang activism. No, it is mysticism, seeing Christ, serving Christ, being in communion with Christ in the poor. How many stops have we done already? 3, no? John the 23rd, the group of the poor, Church of the Poor, and Vatican II. The 4th, our beloved John Paul II. In 1980, addressing the poor people living in the favelas, in the slums in Brazil, he said, "It is God who desires your human advancement. Do not say that it is God's will that you remain in a condition of poverty, disease, unhealthy housing that is contrary in many ways to your dignity as human persons. Do not say it is God who wills it." Strong words from Pope John Paul II, telling the poor, do not say your condition is God's will. Do not say that. It is not the will of God that human beings are subjected to such destitution. It is not God's will. So for Pope John Paul II, Church of the Poor comes from a clarity. What is God's will for human beings? What is God's will for every person created in God's image and likeness? dehumanizing poverty is not part of God's will. So the Church of the Poor declares to people who have been made poor by a system, an economic, political, social, cultural system, to remain poor, we tell them as Church of the Poor, this is not God's will. But if it is not God's will, then we should go and do God's will. And what is God's will? Solidarity, according to Pope John Paul II. Solidarity with the workers. This solidarity must be present wherever it is called for by the growing areas of poverty and even hunger. The Church is firmly committed to this cause, for she considers it her mission, her service, a proof of her fidelity to Christ, so that she can truly be Church of the Poor. So for Pope John Paul II, solidarity with the poor is a part of our fidelity to Christ. Again, John Paul II makes our action on behalf of the poor an aspect of our discipleship, following Christ, fidelity to Christ, seeing Christ, serving Christ in the poor and in everyone. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought when I was preparing this that I would discover from John the 23rd up to this point, when you talk of Church of the Poor, you would talk about activities. No. From John the 23rd up to John, even up to Pope Francis, Church of the Poor is rooted in a spirituality. Do I see Jesus? Do I serve Jesus? And am I faithful to Jesus? That is what is at stake. My fidelity to Christ. Don't worry, the journey is coming close to Pope Francis. But let me tell you a story. I was invited by someone who supervises a factory. He invited me to give a recollection. It was the Lenten season at that time. A recollection for the workers. So my heart was touched, very touched. I said, wow, this is a good supervisor. He is thinking of the spiritual welfare of the workers. So I asked him, what topic, what theme do you want me to develop in the recollection? He said, maybe you can reflect on this. I heard that they want to ask for an increase in their salary. Can you focus on the suffering of Christ so that they will just accept their suffering and they will not ask for an increase? I said, you want me to use Christ so that you could keep your unjust labor practices, using even the suffering of Christ? I said, no, that is not a recollection. That is indoctrination. And you will even misuse the gospel. I am telling you this because, sad to say, even Jesus Christ is being manipulated to keep the poor poor in an inhuman way. Look, Jesus is hanging on the cross. You are not even crucified, so do not complain. I cannot understand that, no? And they claim to be followers of Christ. John Paul II is insisting the Church of the Poor protests against the inhuman treatment of the poor, and do not say it is God's will for you. And the church, in communion and solidarity with them, will do what it can to uphold their dignity. The fifth stop, from Rome, we come to the Philippines. The Second Plenary Council of the Philippines, BCP 2, 1991. 23 years ago, BCP 2 already talked about Church of the Poor in the Philippines as a mark, a characteristic of a renewed church. Renewal. One sign that the church is renewed is when it has become Church of the Poor. I will go through this quickly. No need to explain. They are self-explanatory. According to the Second Plenary Council of the Philippines, these are the characteristics of the Church of the Poor. Filipinos. Local na ito, ha? Local. The Church of the Poor, first, is a church that practices evangelical poverty, meaning it puts its trust in God rather than in money. Once I did a confirmation and I told the candidates, after confirmation, you should follow Jesus and follow Him in trusting God. God is primary. So I asked them, after confirmation, you need to change your lifestyle. What will be more important? Watching TV or studying? Studying. Wow. He said, what is more important? Playing your video games or praying? Praying. Ah. The children are learning. So I said, what is more important and valuable? The Eucharist, the Mass, or $30 million? $30 million. We trust in money. So when they all came to me for confirmation, I really slapped them. Double. $30 million, huh? More than the Eucharist, huh? But the Church of the Poor is being asked, whom do you trust more? God or possessions? Second, in the Church of the Poor, the members of the church have a special love for the poor. Love, not pity, but love of the poor. Many of us pity the poor, but do not love the poor. Third, in the Church of the Poor, the poor people are not discriminated against or are denied sacraments because they do not have money for stipends. Yung bang I want special baptism, solo. I will give this much. Yung bang merong special funeral, ordinary funeral, even in death ba? You still have stratification? Both of them are dead. Why will someone be more special than the others? Why not make all of them special? They're all human beings. Why am I shouting? Another characteristic. In the church of the poor, the pastors and the leaders give time, attention to the poor and share their resources. Not giving time and attention only when the visitor is a potential benefactor. But when it is the poor, parang you are rushing them. Sige na, faster. Another characteristic in the church of the poor, we will be in solidarity and collaboration with the poor to uplift their conditions. Next, in the church of the poor, the rights of the poor and the oppressed are upheld and vindicated. Next, this is, my dear friends, this is important. In the church of the poor will evangelize us. I say this is important because sometimes when we go to the poor, we think we are the ones who will evangelize them, as though we are the bearers of light, the bearers of Christ. No. When we come to the poor, we should be humble to learn from them. They are our teachers. The church of the poor is humble, willing to learn from the poor. Here, in the church of the poor, the pastors, the priests, do not compete for the most prosperous parishes and positions and titles. I have a doctorate. I should be the parish priest of the cathedral. You don't have a doctorate. You must be assigned to a barangay chapel. All of this, that has no place in the church of the poor. And finally, according to PCP2, in the church of the poor, the center of gravity shifts to the poor. Because very often, the center of influence is the rich. So they say in the church of the poor, the center of gravity will tilt towards the poor. So that's PCP2 local. 2 stops remaining. We go back to Rome. The 6th, Benedict XVI. In Deus Caritas Est, in his encyclical on charity, God is love. You know what he said? The church needs 3 pillars: the Word of God, sacraments, and charity of service to the poor. Those 3 must be present, even in parishes, even on the grassroots level, and not just in the diocesan centers. Word, sacrament, and charity, service to the poor. I am appealing to everyone here. I'm sure you are all active in your parishes. The ministry of the Word is very much alive in the parishes. In fact, even among the lay, we have catechists, we have lectors, readers, we have commentators. In fact, there are so many of them. In fact, in some parishes, they have an oversupply of lectors and commentators. Before you get a chance to read, it will take you 2 weeks or even 3 weeks because of the sheer number of people in the ministry of the Word. Also the sacraments. There are many Eucharistic ministers, no? And they are good. Ministry of the Word, ministry of sacrament, beautiful. But sometimes on the parish level, we don't find many who volunteer to ministries of charity for the poor. When you ask people to join the ministry for the promotion of human rights, they will say, "Oh, that's dangerous, that's dangerous." When you ask people, "Let us join the ministry to promote the integrity of creation," "Oh, that's dangerous, that's dangerous." When you ask people, "Let us join the volunteers to prevent human trafficking," "Oh, that's dangerous, that's dangerous." No? So, we are overcrowded in the ministry of the Word, the ministry of sacraments. And as I said, that is good, but lacking, according to Pope Benedict XVI. The Church cannot be complete and cannot stand completely strongly without the service of charity to the poor. And finally, Pope Francis. Pope Francis, in his many speeches and in his Evangelii Gaudium, the joy of the gospel, he says, for the Church, the option for the poor is primarily a theological category rather than a cultural, sociological, political, or philosophical one. This is an important part of the teaching of Pope Francis. The option for the poor is rooted in faith, not in sociology, not in philosophy, not in socio-cultural planning. Option for the poor is part of a theological, meaning a faith option. For him, being Church of the Poor is following God, God who loves the poor. It is following Christ, who became poor so that we may become rich. Being Church of the Poor is again part of faith, part of discipleship. And it is in this context, that the Holy Father says, this is why I want a church which is poor and for the poor. For it is only a church that is poor and is for the poor. It is only that church that truly follows God and follows Jesus Christ. In the same letter, he says, this is not exclusively in activities and programs. For being Church of the Poor is not an unruly activism, but it is about concern for persons. It is about persons. And it is not just giving goods, giving money, giving food. According to Pope Francis, the worst discrimination that the poor experience is this: the lack of spiritual care. So for him, it is not enough to give food, shelter, clothing, which are all good and necessary. But the worst discrimination is they are already deprived of food, shelter, clothing, education. Said they are even deprived of spiritual care. They are not given the Word of God. They are denied sacraments. They are not given pastoral spiritual care. So in the Church of the Poor, while we have programs and activities, we turn to faith. We purify our motivations. And we hope we do serve the poor because Christ is in them. And we are faithful to our discipleship. A discipleship that makes us provide spiritual care to the poor as we learn from them in their witness of faith, hope, and love. 7 stops in the journey. John the 23rd, the Church of the Poor in Vatican II, the Second Vatican Council. What is next? Pope John Paul II, the Second Plenary Council of the Philippines, BCP II, Pope Benedict XVI, Pope Francis. When you look at all of these, there is a common thread. A common thread tying everything. We need to become Church of the Poor in order to follow Christ, in order to see Christ in the poor, in order to love and serve Him in the poor, in order to learn from the poor, in order to be evangelized in our attitudes, lifestyle, preferences, in order to be corrected in our desire for property, honor, dignity, and all of that, renewing the church, renewing individuals, and renewing the face of the earth. So, the Church of the Poor is not optional. It is constitutive. It is essential in our faith life and in our renewal of the church. It took me a long journey, but I purposely did it in order to make it clear to us, to impress upon us that these past 50 years, the Spirit of God has been working with consistency, with vigor, and in the Philippines, with the Second Plenary Council, we have no way to go. We have no way to go. It is not optional. It is part of being church, renewed for the transformation of the world. Thank you very much for your patience, and I hope this could be of help to you in your further reflection. So maraming salamat po. Thank you very much po.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday po.
So, on behalf of
Salamat po.
Caucus
Teka,
for Christ.
hindi pa naman ngayon eh. Sabado pa.
So, Cardinal, on behalf of Caucus for Christ, we really praise and thank the Lord for sending you to us and for giving you to us for this summit,
Thank you po. Thank you.
and wishing you blessings upon blessings and good health. Thank you very much.
Thank you po.
Happy
Thank you very
birthday.
much. Thank you. Oh, you.
Thank you po.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Salamat po.
Yes, sir.
Salamat po.
Let's sing again. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Thank you very much.
Happy birthday po.
Cardinal Chito Tagle.
He is asking me if they can eat the cake na raw. So maybe the cake can be for the children, huh? For the children also. I'm donating this to you, poor
Okay.
children.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
po.
you.